I'd like to welcome everyone this evening to the inaugural lecture of the Alberini Family Speaker Series in Design. I'm Elizabeth Spiller. I'm the Dean of the College of Letters and Science, and I'm honored to start us off this evening and to thank the Alberini family for their vision and their generosity in establishing this endowed annual speaker series focused on design. Endowed gifts are incredibly important to the university and to the College of Letters and Science. Because endowed gifts are invested, the income enables us to maintain funded chairs, professorships, lectures, scholarships, and programs in perpetuity, making a lasting and significant impact. Endowments also create a highly visible link between the donor or honoree and the university, and serve as a lasting tribute to a shared vision, the kind of shared vision of collaboration that makes universities wonderful places to live, learn, work, and think. Donors build strong ties with the programs and the people that their endowments benefit, sharing in the achievements made possible by their gifts. And because endowments are permanent, successive generations of a donor's family often maintain these relationships and reap the rewards from the honorary nature of their endowment. It is thus especially gratifying to have Carlos Alberini and Kin Ying Lee as our inaugural speakers in this series tonight. We are pleased to be hosting this lecture this year with the Graduate School of Management as part of their Dean's Distinguished Speaker Series. I would like to now introduce Dean and Professor Rao Unava. His research focuses on brand loyalty, consumer response to advertising and sales promotions, and consumer memory. His work has appeared in the Journal of Marketing Research and Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, among many others. He is on the editorial review boards of the Journal of Consumer Research and Journal of Consumer Psychology. He joined the Graduate School of Management in June 2016, following 32 years at The Ohio State University's Fisher College of Business. Please join me in giving him a very warm welcome.
Go Buckeyes, go Aggies. 10 months. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rao Unava. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Carlos Alberini, the CEO of Lucky Brand, their family, Kin Ying Lee, our favorite in answering questions today. No, I'm just kidding you. Chief Creative Officer of Lucky Brand. I've been on her case today, just making her answer questions, and it's been a treat to watch her perform. Tonight we'll be treated to a great discussion on strategy, design, and brand transformation. I believe you're all familiar with, and many of you have purchased Lucky Brand in the past. My own introduction to the brand happened when I bought it for my wife as a birthday present. I remember taking advice from a salesperson at Macy's who told me it was a premium brand and looked at me like I should feel lucky to own it. I also remember that gift as the only one in our 36 years of married life that she accepted as is with pleasure and no criticism. So I finally remember the white jacket that was paired with some jeans that I was buying for her, and me just thinking, wow, who is the person behind this who even thought of this kind of a design for the jacket? And then I had this image of Kin Lee in front of me. So that, I think, is the power of design. So something that makes you desire the product and open up your wallet, which Carlos wants, right? In fact, Nietzsche actually says creativity can be an ecstasy of both pleasure and pain for the artist. Inspiration, when it strikes, is a powerful force that its recipient has little control over. It's kind of interesting to see what happens to these creative geniuses who come up with these products. I was just thinking about, am I the only guy who likes this brand? Or just go online and have a look at what some people are saying about it. And I have 3 reviews I picked up. I know a lot of people think there's no difference between premium denim and just regular old, say, Aeropostale jeans. There totally is a difference. Anyway, this is a teenager, obviously, totally, right? I totally like the pair of Lucky Skinnies I bought. Second, Lucky jeans are the most comfortable jeans that I own. I used to wear American Eagle and A&F, Abercrombie & Fitch, But then I tried a pair of Lucky jeans, and I loved them. So this is a great comment. I would not use it when there is an A&F person here. 3, I absolutely love Lucky brand jeans. They have become the only brand of jeans I purchased since I worked at Buckle, which sold Lucky at the time. I don't know about that. It's probably some time ago. The only downside I would mention is that they often retire favorite cuts. So I have to purchase third party on eBay. This is very impressive that somebody has to go to eBay to buy those jeans because they like them so much. So how does this kind of creativity link back to strategy? It's always been a source of inspiration for me that we all have ideas, and a few of them get implemented, and even fewer of them actually get implemented successfully. So there's somewhere a link that is tenuous. It's very difficult for us to get it. The link between creativity, strategy, and then making this brand into something that people believe it's theirs. How does that happen is how we're going to have some discussion today. So it's particularly gratifying to all of us at GSM who are represented here as well to listen to Carlos and Kin to talk about what exactly happens behind the scenes for somebody like me who really holds his wallet tight to open it up. What makes it happen? We want to thank the Alberini family for their generosity in endowing this series, the College of Letters and Science, Dean Spiller, for their generosity in sharing this stage with us, and all of you for taking the time here to greet the Alberini family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Unova. And I want to say, sort of on the topic of collaboration, I'm very excited that this audience includes students both from the Graduate School of Management and students from design, because I agree that indeed the creative process by definition is a collaborative process. And I'm excited that we're going to hear more about that in a couple of minutes. It's really fitting to have such a prestigious lecture series in design because, okay, so I love all of the majors in the College of Letters and Science. I just want to say that in public in front of everybody. But design is indeed just such an exciting program, one of our fastest growing, most dynamic programs. The focus really, both in the teaching and research, emphasizes a couple of core values that I think are really define what kind of place Davis is: socially responsible, human-centered, and sustainable practice. As a result, in part because of those values, the design program is really the only comprehensive academic unit in the University of California system that delivers research-focused undergraduate degree that really integrates design history, theory and criticism with design thinking, making, writing, visual literacy, and creative practice. This explains why all the students are so smart, is that they have to do all those things. The studio courses include design as practice in exhibition, fashion, information, interior architecture, product lighting and furniture, textiles, visual communications, digital, environmental, print, and sustainable design. Few of us will deny the power and the prevalence of design in really nearly every aspect of our life, from computers and clothing to exhibitions and lighting design. And our graduates are deeply prepared to apply what they have learned to make the world not just look better, but function better, more beautifully. Some of our design students and faculty are in the audience this evening. I'd like to ask you all to stand and be recognized. Thank you. And now it is my great honor to introduce Interim Chancellor Ralph Hexter. Interim Chancellor Hexter began his service at UC Davis in 2011 as Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor. He has served as the Interim Chancellor since September of 2016. He also holds an appointment as Distinguished Professor of Classics and Comparative Literature in the College of Letters and Science. He is a deeply respected scholar and member of the National Academy of Arts and Sciences. As Interim Chancellor, he oversees all aspects of the university's teaching, research, and public service mission, including the UC Davis Health System. In all of his leadership positions, Interim Chancellor Hexter has made it a priority, which is, I think, why we're here tonight, to foster excellence across the full range of disciplines and to promote equal opportunity, diversity, and inclusion for students, faculty, and staff. Please welcome Interim Chancellor Hexter.
Thank you, Dean Spiller. I realize this is a long series of introductions. We'll get to the heart of the matter very soon, I promise, but I want to really thank the Alberini family for being here and for their generosity. Philanthropic giving to UC Davis is a strong affirmation that our alumni, our donors, our parents, and friends believe in our land-grant mission and our vision to be a global leader in addressing the most pressing challenges of our time. These investments in our future have tremendously positive benefits, in many cases transformational for UC Davis faculty, staff, and most importantly, our students. We're simply bowled over by the vision and commitment of the entire Alberini family in establishing this lecture series. I'm delighted that so many members of the family are present this evening, and we are so deeply proud of Alexis as a 2016 design graduate of the College of Letters and Science. Needless to say, in design. Do we want to do an applause? Okay. Tonight we have the great privilege, as you know, to hear Carlos Alberini and Kin Ying Lee talk about the tremendous success of Lucky Brand, one of the most iconic clothing brands in the country. Lucky Brand produces sportswear, outerwear, t-shirts, activewear, shoes, and children's clothing, but they're best known for their vintage-inspired denim jeans, which they began making in Los Angeles in 1990. Excuse me. They say their jeans are designed with the laid-back lifestyle of Southern California in mind, but I dare say they would also hold up well under the Northern California rigors of touring wine countries and tasting olive oil, dining at farm-to-fork restaurants, or even my sport, as you know, hang gliding from our glacier-polished granite domes. Actually, you'll find Lucky Brand all over America in 209 stores as well as online and in select department stores. Carlos Alberini joined Lucky Brand as its Chief Executive Officer in 2014. He previously was Co-Chief Executive Officer at Restoration Hardware and was President and Chief Operating Officer of the Guess clothing retailer. Kin Ying Lee joined Lucky Brand in 2014 as Executive Vice President and Chief Creative Officer. She previously served as Vice President of Design for Madewell and was formerly a Director of Design at Ruhl Hollister and, yes, Abercrombie & Fitch. After their talk, Susan Avila, who chairs our Department of Design, will moderate a question and answer session. Please join me in welcoming our speakers to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you, Ralph. And I just want to say thank you to the school, to the entire team that really made this possible. You know, just only a year ago, this was just a dream for us, for our family. And I think it was something that if it hadn't been for how much effort was put into making this happen, we wouldn't be here. So we are honored that this is the case, and I want to say thank you. Thanks to Interim Chancellor Ralph Hexter, Dean of the College of Letters and Science, Elizabeth Spiller, Dean of Graduate School of Management, Raul Nava, thank you so much for dinner, by the way. Assistant Dean of the College of Letters and Science, Charlene Madison, Executive Director, Graduate School of Management, Leanne Hartman, Chair of the Department of Design, Susana Avila, Senior Director of Development, Christine Tibbs, Director of Development, Eric Gifford, Event Coordinator, Crystal Masuda, Design and GSM faculty, thank you for being here, students, my friends, my family, my Lucky Brand family. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being here. We are super excited to share our story. We had an opportunity to really think about how we were going to do this with Kin, and we work together every single day, and I couldn't be more honored to share this stage with you. So let me talk to you about Mi Gorda first, okay? This This is my wife. This is Andrea. Tomorrow we're celebrating our 33rd anniversary. And Andrea is my rock, and has been my rock for all those years. But if you ask all our kids, 4 of them are here today, they will probably tell you that she is the rock of our family, and she's at the center of everything that happens. And I just saw a quote that I think applies tremendously well to her, for me and our relationship. And she is my best friend. And it said, this quote said that you have the sensibility to catch that first tear, the strength to see and catch the second one, and the courage to stop the third one. And that is you. So thank you. We have a wonderful family. These are our kids. And really, we have been very, very lucky, no pun intended, with what we experienced. We came to this country about 32 years ago, and we are both from Argentina, and we grew up there. I went to school in the University of Buenos Aires. I'll show you some of the specific things and experiences that I had. But by far, this is the best, the most amazing fortune that we have as parents. And our family started growing again. This is our first wedding that took place in 2014, our oldest son and his wife, Christy. And this is our second wedding that we just celebrated this past September. You would think that they're kind of like the same picture, but they're not. So there are a few more people there. And this is Victoria's and Adam's wedding that they are both here tonight. So we're very happy. Right as we were celebrating this wedding, our third child, son, who is on the right here with the beard, and his fiancée announced at the time that they were going to get married this September. So we are going to be celebrating the third one. The other two, let's wait a little bit. I think we have some time. Well, so I was very fortunate because I started as a finance guy. And at the time, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but it became very obvious very quickly that I wanted to be in senior management and do strategy and someday run a company. And I had to work very long days to really get to that position. And so I could say today that I'm living my dream. I have the best job. I have an amazing opportunity. I am proud of the company. I'm proud of what we're doing. And really, it took all those years to really be prepared for that. And I had an opportunity to work in retail at the very beginning of my career. And retail, being a finance guy, was a great match because having the opportunity to understand financial matters and then seeing how a retail organization would run, where you make decisions every single day that can have a significant impact on the performance of the company, it was just an incredible opportunity for me to grow and fulfill that dream that I was talking about. So I worked for most of those companies as retailers, other than PricewaterhouseCoopers, that I left in 1987, and I was able to really grow through the different areas within retail, starting with finance, but then I went into the more operating areas, and most recently as co-CEO of Restoration Hardware, where I had an opportunity to really see the company from the very strategic points of management. In 2013, at the end of 2013, I got a call from a private equity firm, Leonard Green, who are very, very experienced in the retail world. And they said, we have an opportunity to buy Lucky Brand. If you want to come and run it, we will buy it for you. And I said, excuse me? And the opportunity was very serious, and I was very excited. We were having great business in restoration hardware. We have done a lot of great things, and the company continues to thrive and do very well. But it was also an opportunity for us to go back to Los Angeles, which was a city that we call home and that we love. And Andrea definitely wanted to go back. So there was a big personal reason, in addition to fulfilling my dream, because at Restoration I was co-CEO. In this case, I can be the CEO of the company, and more than anything, have the opportunity to instill my values and really be completely authentic with who I am and what I think the culture of the company needs to be. And I'm very happy that I made that decision and never looked back once. We mentioned that we have been here for almost 33 years, and I would be. It's very important that I talk about how grateful we are to this country, because we came here with just our suitcases. No, only one. So suitcase. All right, and really everything we did here, has been, just it took a lot of effort, but we were so fortunate to really have those efforts being rewarded significantly, and we are completely grateful to this country. And I hope that every American feels that way, because really what we have here is pretty extraordinary. I have two hobbies. One is my family, and the other one is work. All right? So now we're going to talk about the power, and we call this idea the power of strategy in brand transformation and design. And so I'm going to address the side of strategy, and then Kin is going to talk about design. But we try to really instill a spirit of humor and good health in the company. And I would like to share with you a little exercise here, and hopefully this will impact your lives as it has impacted my life. And this is something called laughter yoga. And I don't know if you are familiar with laughter yoga, but I'm gonna, we were in a meeting, and this we participated in this exercise. It really changed the turn of events during that meeting. So I'm a firm believer of this, and this is what it is. Some doctor in India in the 90s discovered that if when we laugh, human beings, when we laugh, there is a flow of blood that is significantly superior to the normal flow. So and the body starts releasing some chemicals and positive neurotransmitters that really make us feel significantly better, and we are just much more engaged, and our energy goes up. And this happens in a very, within 45 seconds to a minute, the body starts releasing this, and in about 2 minutes, you are in kind of like full force. Now, this is the catch. The body cannot discern whether you are laughing for a good reason or if it's just a fake laugh. All right? So, but the impact is still the same. So I'm going to ask you to really exercise with me and see if this is, it's going to work. And there are two things that we have to do. One is breathe, which I'm sure everybody can handle here. And the second thing is laugh. Okay, so, and you don't have to laugh for any particular reason at all, but you have to laugh. So I'm going to ask all of you to really stand up. Okay, this is not going to take long. All right, so, and I'm going to lead you. Okay, so now we're going to raise our arms, breathe deep, and then go. All right, that was good. That was good. Now the next time we're going to laugh when we release our oxygen. All right, ready? All right, that was good, but I couldn't hear well. All right, so what we're going to do now is something called cell phone laugh. And the idea is that you have to imagine that you are listening to this best joke ever, all right? And we're going to laugh like, okay, come on. Good. All right. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to do the laughter handshake. You're going to shake your hand with somebody, and you're going to laugh. All right. Well, thank you very much. I know you can sit. All right. So you can claim that you went to the gym today. You did something good. It's kind of interesting. I just researching this thing. As kids, we laugh 300 times a day, and as adults, it's only 30 times. And this is really very healthy. So, anyways, I hope that you get into this. All right. So I'm gonna try to move us quickly, so then we leave enough time for questions later on. We bought the company in 2014. And the company had been founded, like Rao said, in 1990 by two entrepreneurs, very, very engaged in the whole denim business. And it was originally a denim brand. And then they were very successful. The brand took off. Sales really grew very quickly. And then at some point, they were looking for a liquidity event. So they decided to sell the company to Liz Claiborne at the time. And Liz Claiborne started growing this company in a very, very fast, extremely fast way. And the business really derailed during those years, and the brand lost relevance. So when we took over, that was part of the challenge. How do we regain the relevance that the brand had at some point? The business was well distributed. We had, a presence in department stores like Macy's, Nordstrom, and so forth, and we had significant stores in both retail malls and also outlet malls, and we had a small but meaningful licensing business. And the company was doing okay, but making very little money relative to the size of the business. So the first thing that we did in 2014 was to learn. And we tried to learn about the customer, we tried to learn about the brand, the real estate, how the company was positioned relative to the competition, and our team, our people. And we were able to really draw very significant conclusions as to what we needed to do to really move the brand forward. Then we put together a strategy, a plan, and I'm going to share some of those key initiatives with you. But then we used 2015 to be more a year of validation, where we were trying to validate all those key initiatives and that all those assumptions that were going to work. Then in 2016, things got significantly challenging towards the end of 2015, and we thought that we had to really refocus the business as the changes in retail were so transformative and so challenging to the traditional model that the company had always had. And then this year, we are calling this year the year of brand transformation, because we think that the business has to be transformed for everybody who is in this space, and that is what we are trying to do. And I'll share with you some of those changes. I mentioned that we are in many different points of distribution. We are very happy with that, with the distribution that we have. We have a business that last year produced slightly over $600 million in revenues. But if you translate all those dollars into what the consumer is paying at the point of sale, that number is about $1.2 billion, because we have a very sizable licensing business, and the only thing that we recognize as revenues is the royalties that our licensees pay us for the sales that they generate. We are very happy with how balanced the portfolio is. You can see that the wholesale business represents about 37% of the total revenue base. And the retail business, this is the full price stores, which are about 173 stores. We are just closing a couple now. But that represents almost a third of the total business. So we like the fact that we have this fluidity in terms of how the product is being distributed, and we see opportunities to continue to really take advantage of that. One of the numbers that don't seem that big over there is the e-commerce business, which represents 11% of the total business. But if you relate that number to the product that is sold through other channels like the full-price retail stores, our penetration is pretty significant at about 28%. That, of course, it's about almost as high as the best in class, which probably would be Urban Outfitters with 29 or maybe 32% this year. The brand is always founded on these 4 pillars, and we love this. Ken is going to talk more about it, but the 4 pillars are music, rock and roll, Southern California lifestyle, moto, and vintage Americana. And these have been there from the beginning, from the founding of the company. And what we love about this is that this is not a story that we are making up. It's true, it's authentic, it has tremendous integrity, and it continues to be very relevant today. And it's relevant across generations. So I love vintage. Our kids love vintage. It's also something that is very relevant across cultures. So you go, we love moto here in America. The same thing happens in South America. If you go to Europe, the same thing is true. So we believe that this kind of pillars are a key ingredient to be able to make this brand someday a big, powerful global brand. The brand has a pretty significant awareness level among consumers. If you look at women, that number is at 77%. If you look at men, that number is at 58%. And the great thing is that when you think about the size of our business, the brand awareness level is significantly higher, which implies that at some point, we could be a much larger company. No? If you look at to the left of those charts, in both cases, the companies that have that kind of numbers in terms of brand awareness are multi-billion-dollar companies. So that is a pretty exciting opportunity for us. We love our customers. We have a customer that's very affluent. They are older than what you would think for a denim brand, but 35 and older represents about 80% of our customer base. These are people that are highly employed. They are very active, and they live very active lifestyles, which is a very important part of our thesis in terms of how we think that we can grow the business. And these are people that are making enough money and have enough disposable income to be able to really buy much more product from the company. So we like the price positioning of the brand. Here we did this just for denim, but you can see that we are in that price between $99 and $149 for a pair of jeans. We like the fact that we are not at an entry price point like you would look there for Levi's and Gap, because it's very difficult to produce the kind of quality that we want to represent through our brand. But at the same time, we are not as expensive as many of the premium brands where, if you want to buy a pair of jeans, you have to pay about $200. We think that we can produce and offer the customers a similar type of product with a similar type of quality at a price that is significantly less. So the approach that we took for the brand transformation, everything we did, we just kind of grounded our analysis and our learnings on the brand. So I don't think that if you're thinking about transforming any brand, that you can forget about what you know about the brand and staying true to that brand. So we started with the customer, and we learned about the customer, and we took those learnings and evolved the product accordingly. After that, we said, well, now we have a great product assortment, or we are on our way. We need to really reconceptualize the store environment. How is that we are going to offer and present the product? And then we said, well, now that we have that, how are we going to tell this story? So marketing became a pretty significant part of the strategy. And last but not least, the customer omni-channel experience had to be reviewed and reconceptualized as well. So we started with the customer, and the first thing we did was this customer research. We asked the customer a very simple question. When you buy Lucky Brand product, do you wear that product for weekends? And sure enough, 85% of both men and women said, oh yeah, absolutely. When I buy that product, that's where I use it, where I wear it. But then we asked the question, well, how about going to work? How about going out? And the numbers came down significantly. Well, that was not a big surprise because most of our apparel and ready-to-wear was very casual. But then we asked the question, well, what if we made more product under Lucky Brand for other occasions, like going out, like going to work. And two things were pretty important in the answers. The first one was that when we asked about weekends, the numbers didn't go up. So we said, okay, we'll make more product for you. Would you buy more product from Lucky for weekends? And the answer was, no, 85% is kind of it. We are buying enough for that particular occasion. But the numbers for going out and going to work went up significantly, especially with women. So we thought, okay, here we have a customer that is highly employed, very active, so they were participating in those other occasions for sure. And they had the affluence to be able to really pay for additional product, and for sure they were spending money with other retailers or other brands for those other occasions. So we felt, in this case, we have that engagement and that loyalty from the customers. Why wouldn't we go and really develop a product line that really reflects and satisfies those new occasions? So we created this strategy. At the center, in this box, is the core business. And then we said, okay, what if we expand our wearing occasions and we offer things for other types of use? And we increase the breadth and the depth to dominate existing categories. Up until that point, the company was, if we made dresses, we would have probably a couple of dresses. It was never, a situation where the customer would really think of us as a dominant in that particular product category. And we said, if we're going to be in a business, let's make sure that we can dominate it. Introducing new categories to really complete the lifestyle of that customer. And then develop product that has broad appeal and versatility. We saw that we were almost too specific in the taste levels that we were following. So our lifestyle, we defined it as, we started with what we were doing and where we have capabilities internally. So this circle represents that. We do and we design and manufacture denim. We do the same for women's fashion, men's fashion, and we have some lines in accessories like jewelry that we do internally. But then we said, how do we complete the lifestyle of this customer? How do we make sure that we really offer and we put together a line of product that really can complete that lifestyle? So we went after licensing businesses. We're trying to find partners that were experts in certain product categories. So we have done quite a bit. This is women's shoes. You can see these are all licenses that we just put together during the last 3 years. And the last one is some that we are partnering with Macy's. Macy's is developing a line for home. We're starting with bedding. But they have committed space. They are doing the whole design and development. But our design team is completely integrated in that whole process and making sure that the line represents the brand in the way that it would if we were developing the product ourselves. Another one that is super exciting and is very new is watches. We are going to have our own line of watches, and we think that this is pretty tremendous because the business model is superior. We have no capital invested in inventories other than when we buy inventories to sell in our own stores or in our own channels or in e-commerce. But all these licensees are in charge of developing and manufacturing and distributing the product for the most part. So we are very excited about that. At the time, this was great as a corporate type of bookcase, right? But we said, okay, how do we make sure that the design team, that the merchants, that everybody who touches product can understand what we are trying to accomplish? You go to those charts, right? The box and this and that. Oh, this is, you want more inventory here and more product there. But how do we make that much more tangible? So I asked Kin to really put this into visuals, and she's amazing at this, as one of many things. And what she did was she created an imaginary customer family that really was going to wear all these, different products from Lucky for the different occasions or different activities that they will participate in the house. So this is the family. The Lucky woman is a 36-year-old restaurateur. They love to entertain. He is a business tech analyst. and they have 2 kids, they have a dog, and they live in that house, okay? And then she went from occasion to occasion, so everyday casual for her, and what would she wear for those particular occasions. And this is all product that is not necessarily Lucky product, but she was able to really represent what Lucky product would look for those particular occasions. And she did it for the different areas for men, and weekend getaway, and lazy weekend, and working out, and all the different occasions. So you get exactly how we put this together. And we went with this and really presented this to the entire design team and also our licensee partners. So here you have, what would be the vision for bedding or home, and we are using a lot of the prints that we are using for apparel as well. Or what we would do with furniture if at some point we had some of this. And leather is such a key material that we use in our own apparel. So, it was very easy to see how the product would evolve to really represent the brand with integrity. So what do we win? We came up with this, on the left is what we inherited. On the right is where we're going. And basically what we're saying is this is gonna be a full lifestyle brand that really caters to that consumer for multiple occasions. We want to use our stores more as showrooms. We have very small stores, but if we continue to expand the product assortment, we're gonna have a challenge to be able to display all those additional products, but we think that we can use the stores and bridge that gap with iPads in stores, which we have provided. We want to be intercepting the customer with marketing techniques and relying more on digital and expanding the footprint to capture an international marketplace. So that's our plan. Now, unfortunately, things didn't go as planned for most retailers in our space, and we are being affected by change as well. So there's a quote from Charles Darwin that says, "The species that is the most adaptable to change is the one that survives. It's not the strongest nor the most intelligent." And I feel that this is very applicable to what's happening in retail today. And we are very excited to be one that really not only embraces change, but celebrates it. We think that there is a big opportunity for us to really capitalize on all the things that have been changing. And the changes are pretty transformative and very disruptive. So, I listed a few here. Square footage overgrowth in retail. I think that we have a ratio of square footage per capita that is about 7 times what you find in Europe or even Asia. 7 times. There is so much overgrowth. The second big thing, the internet revolution and what's happening there and how that is impacting the way the customer shops today. Incredible. Amazon is such a powerful mover and a big disruptor. The continued customer traffic declines, and it's just very difficult to make up for those numbers if you lose revenues in the malls. That is for most of us, all of us. That is a fixed cost structure. So if you lose revenue, that means that you're going to make less money. Even if you are able to transfer some of those sales into the e-commerce business, it will never be sufficient. And the e-commerce business also carries a variable expense structure. So if you have more sales here, that means that you also have to pay for those sales in that business model. Fast fashion. Fast fashion has had a major impact in our industry, and we think that continues to be a superior model. So we are trying to really adjust what we do internally to compete with them more effectively. New marketing models and the impact of digital, and the millennial generation, which is most of you here. This is something that really is impacting the way people shop, and we want to learn, and we want to be able to really become a great brand for the millennial generation. Last year the millennials became a larger generation than mine, the baby boomers, and I think that the one that comes next, which I think is Generation Z, is expected to be even bigger. So we know that if we don't connect with that customer or anybody who is in this space that doesn't, we'll have a very tough time. there are some things that didn't change for the worse, and we are very happy with this. People still wear clothes, all right? That's a good thing. And if you look at these numbers, just this compares total sales in retail in the U.S. from 2010 to 2015. And there has been a pretty meaningful growth and a significant one. We are a small company, so we believe that we could really take market share and continue to grow, especially when the overall demand is so healthy in the country. Now, of course, you can see there that the penetration of e-commerce to total sales has grown significantly, and that is expected. That will continue to be the case for several years. We are very happy with our business model. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but just to the right, you can see the operating margins that we deliver with each of the channels where we do business. And we have an opportunity here. I mean, the specialty, which is the full-price stores, with the decline of customer traffic and consequent decline of sales, has really hurt our profitability. So now we are barely profitable there. But all the other parts of the business, the wholesale business delivers a 25% operating margin. Our licensing business, obviously, every dollar that we collect is a profit dollar. So the operating margin is at almost 100%. Our e-commerce business is very healthy and very profitable at 24%. And even our outlet business, we have 86 stores, and we are earning about 60.5% in operating margin. So we are very happy. The great thing here is that we can really maneuver. We can change the business model very quickly. And when you look at the makeup of our business, we feel that we are in a very good position. This one of the investment bankers did this slide initially. They didn't put Lucky Brand, but the idea here was, well, in this environment, especially with the impact of Omni and how significant that is to retailers, if you have less than 400 stores, that's a good thing. If you have a bigger penetration of e-commerce, that is also a good thing. So being in the upper quadrant here is the best place to be. You don't want to be where you have so many stores and you don't have a penetration of e-commerce. And some of those companies that are having a tough time, Guess being one of them, Abercrombie & Fitch being another one, even Limited Brands. And, just there are a lot of companies that are somewhat dependent on the amount of real estate that they have. You have a company like Abercrombie & Fitch. It has, I don't know, maybe 700 stores by now, maybe more. So we like this because it gives us a lot of flexibility to change the business model. So the year of brand transformation. I couldn't talk about this without talking about our team and our culture. I call it increase employee engagement. This is one of our goals. But I want to share with you our vision. This is, and this came from the team. So we say, Lucky Brand, look good, feel good, do good, inspiring everyone to lead a lucky life. And the idea here is, like, of course, look good. We are in that business, so we better have that one, right? But, feel good. We believe that health is wealth, and we are trying to really motivate our teams and our people to really live a healthy life and exercise and eat well and so forth. And then do good. We want to make this place this world a better place, and we believe that with the company. And it's pretty amazing. We have a very young team. About the age of our corporate group is about 35. We have 500 people, and that is the age. If you take me out, it will be about 25. But no. And it's an incredible thing that when the team really heard that we were putting this and saying, hey, we're going to live by this vision and this mission, it was pretty incredible, the level of engagement that we got and how committed people are to really make this real. So we use this as our filter for the big decisions that we make, and we try to really get everybody to really follow that belief. Inspiring everyone to lead a lucky life. The idea here is that we are all in control of our own luck. So we are using, obviously, the lucky term, but, really to convey that message. It's like this things don't just happen to us. We are in control of really forging or modeling our own luck, and we believe in that. We track how we do with our team in terms of level of engagement. We just did a survey, and we asked here, for our entire team, we had a 92% participation level, which we are very proud of, because normally the consultants are telling us that that number is between 60 and 70% if you're doing well. So to get so much response is very important. And we are listening to what our people are saying. And we asked them to define the culture, and the size of the word there determines the frequency with which that word was mentioned by the people in the company. And we are very proud of that. We are very proud of those results. We love all those words, just fun, open, honesty, driven, friendly, challenging. Well, you can see it, but and I honestly believe that this is going to make a big difference in being successful. And I think that the companies that don't care about this, or don't look at it, or think that they are superior to this, will have a significant issue, because I think, especially with the younger generation, this is something that people expect, and they should expect. These are all things that we are trying to do to really respond to the environment. I mentioned about the changes, so we are optimizing, trying to go to a new go-to-market strategy. This is the idea here is that we were developing product from concept to delivery in about 52 weeks, and we are trying to reduce that to about 38 weeks. And the idea is that we could even do better someday. Maybe Ken will talk more about this, but this is a big deal to be able to compete with the fast fashion companies. Optimizing omni strategy, obviously, this is very key. We just reorganized our teams. Jenna Renfro, our Chief Merchandising Officer, is here, and she has just implemented this major reorganization to really streamline our merchant teams. And I think that's going to be very helpful. The executing our marketing strategy, we think that about a concept that we call CustomerCentricity. I'll spend 1 minute on that. And then pursuing new business development. We believe that we have a platform that could really be used much more efficiently with multiple brands. And we think that even when we are small, we have capabilities to really operate in many different channels. So we are excited about being able to really bring other brands under the fold and use our team to really run those brands. So we are looking at acquisitions very intensely with our partners at Leonard Green, and we are excited about also the opportunity to take the company internationally. So customer centricity, the whole idea is that it used to be that most companies were very product centric, and it was all like, okay, you will build it, they will come. You make this amazing product, then customers will find you, and so forth. And I think that there is a completely different school of thought here, and I'm one of those believers that you have to put the customer at the center today. It's not about putting the product at the center. Now, of course, you need amazing product, but if you don't believe that the customers are not all created equal, and that you don't believe that representing and making sure that those customers are pleased and satisfied and see the engagement level as a big asset, I think you're going to lose. So, in our case, and I'm going to show you this bunch of numbers here, but this is our customer base. We have 2.2 million customers in our database. We are using a company called Custora, and what they do is they determine the customer lifetime value of all the customers that we have in that database based on purchasing behavior and knowing what the attrition levels are, and when the customers are going to buy more, or when they're going to drop off, or so forth. And we found out, based on those numbers, that about 10% of our customer base, this 22,000 plus the 88,000 plus the 107,000, 216,000 people, okay, 10% of our total base, they represent about 73% of the expected repeat shopping that is going to happen next year. So now, think about that. I mean, if we know that those 200,000 people are so important, what we wouldn't do to really satisfy them? So that's the idea. So putting the customer at the center is a big, big deal. this is my team, our team. These are all my direct reports, and you can see there, this is Jenna, who is there sitting in the front, and here is Kin. And I want to say, look at that, she's so shy now, you see. I want to say that, just it has been a wonderful, wonderful experience to have had the opportunity to work with Kin during these 3 years. And she has incredible talents in design and creative, and she has been doing not just design of product, but also everything that touches the brand. So she is kind of like our brand steward in many ways. In addition to product design, she is heading the whole marketing team, and she is heading visual merchandising. She was in the middle of designing our entire store. And all that is incredible. But the number one quality that she brings is this incredible, amazing team player that she is. Her humility and the way she works with everybody and collaborates with everybody has been just exemplary for us. So with that, I want to turn the program to Kin.
Thank you. Okay. Do you want your phone? Okay. I'm not going to look at you guys. I'm going to take that off. Thank you. Okay. How do I follow that? That's so amazing. Carlos is the best when he comes on stage. He's incredible. He's so natural. So he expects that from me, and it's a little tougher. But I'm going to roll with it. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I really want to thank Carlos and also his family, his whole family, that have brought this together. And I feel very honored to be part of. Of course, I have my own family. I come from a family of I have 4 siblings. There's 5 of us as well. So I really understand the big family. And then also I have 2 kids of my own as well, and my husband's here. And what's really exciting is that throughout your whole career path, you have your own family, and you join so many different kind of brands. In my instance, and you find and you learn from each of these families. And I think that I want to tell you my journey in terms of how I got to Lucky, and that's my new family in LA. So. That's why I wanted to kind of start there. And then the other piece as well is I think that the other thing too is that with any of the learnings in terms of brand and also transformation, it's all about understanding where you come from. And that's going to be how I'm going to take you through the journey of all these brands that I've been through as well. For me, I want to give you a little color of where I grew up. As you can tell, I have an accent as well as Carlos. I actually was born in Hong Kong. I moved to England when I was 6. And I moved to England. My parents were immigrant parents, and they were working very hard. And then they brought all of us over, and we all kind of was in a very small northern town up in Lincolnshire. For some of you guys who are from England, and it's not very diverse. We were literally the only non-white family in the whole of pretty much the town. No, the school. I'm kidding. And it's it was difficult, but at the same time you learn to adapt and you learn to kind of evolve. And I think that was a huge learning. But it was amazing experience. And I think that England gave me a huge opportunity in terms of creativity, because I think that what was really great about England is the design schools there were actually incredible. And I was fortunate enough to get into Kingston, and I was there. During that period where I learned so much about kind of basically design and kind of creativity, as well as the process of design. So that was really exciting, and it really, from my parents and also in terms of being at Kingston, I think all of that kind of instilled a lot in me, especially my parents. Passion, hard work, independence, and also drive. Because the first thing I wanted to do was basically find a job. I didn't care what it was. I need to find a job. I want to make sure that they were not worried about me. So I think that was my mission. So that was a huge drive for me. It was really kind of, I think an underlining kind of factor of, me working and being very focused. Let me show you a little bit about my career. I started with, after Kingston, I actually went straight to Abercrombie. And I started there in 99. And during that time, it was a very small company. There was about 200 and some people, and we were sharing a office with basically the Limited brand, and we were sharing an office. Basically, upstairs was basically Victoria's Secret, and we were downstairs at Abercrombie. And I remember going to the canteen. It would be people in black black suits with stilettos, and there was us with flip-flops and jeans and basically, tanks. And we were kind of joining forces in terms of eating, and then we would leave. And it was such a bizarre experience, but what was really great was, for me, coming from England, I felt like I knew trend. I knew what, basically growing up in a little bit of the kind of Asia influence as well, Asian influence. I knew about kind of like the Asian trend, the European trend, but then coming to Abercrombie, it was a huge kind of a differentiation in terms of culture. Yes, we all spoke English, but at the same time, it was very different. I learned a lot about what it meant to be collegiate, what East Coast meant, what it was prep. I mean, that was so new in terms of kind of, dialogue, and I think that really builds the brand. And I think at Abercrombie at the time, especially with Mike Jeffries, who was the CEO at the time, there was so much attention to kind of, a really narrow focus in terms of the market space. So, and I'll tell you a little bit more in depth as we go through, but, it was very much about exclusivity. It was about aspiration, and I think those were really kind of big buzzwords that were happening during that time. And then I was fortunate enough to kind of somehow there was this bubbling of a new concept, and the reason why at the time was basically Abercrombie had Abercrombie Kids, which was basically starting from, I think, I should know this, but it was about 6, 7 years old to maybe 14-ish, 12. And those sizes were basically captured because it was mini versions of what Abercrombie was doing. And Abercrombie was basically focusing on the, college kids. And in between that, there was a gap. And I think that, from a strategy perspective, there was a hole there in the market. And I think there were definitely other brands that were doing that. I won't name those team brands that were doing that kind of in-between kind of team world. And I think that at the time, there was a vision to basically start something that was very different. And so Hollister came about, and I was able to join the team from the beginning and kind of, started from scratch. And very fortunate, again, this is where it becomes a very different learning. It's West Coast. It's about surf culture. It's vintage. It's this whole idea of kind of California. And for me, again, it was like, oh, what does that mean? And I think throughout this whole process, it's about kind of learning how to build a brand. So I was very fortunate to be able to be part of that and be exposed to that. And then, I don't know why, they always pick me to kind of start the new things, but it was really great. I was fortunate enough to kind of, at the time, again, Abercrombie was basically, the people that were in Abercrombie were transitioning out into the workforce. Think about it. They've basically graduated, and they're now kind of moving away. Where were they going to buy clothes? And they were basically going to maybe Gap, maybe J. Crew. There were so many different options out there, and they did not want to lose their customer. They wanted to create something that was basically kind of that really captured the postgraduate audience. And especially when it comes to kind of brand loyalty, at the time, it was the golden era of Abercrombie, where everybody loved Abercrombie, right? You couldn't do anything wrong, and it was amazing. And so they basically kind of, thought about, we need to start a new concept. And at the time, it was called Concept 4, and we were in this secret bunker in like the middle of, New Albany. And so we basically started kind of like concepting this idea, and basically Rule came about, and we kind of created this kind of brand from scratch, and it was really exciting. It was very much focused on kind of like the older customer in a sense of a little bit older, and then and kind of again still grounding around all the product that the Abercrombie Corporation really kind of did well. After that, about 2005, I got a call, and I was very lucky to be able to join, to meet Mickey Drexler, again, another great CEO. I've been very fortunate throughout my career that I was able to kind of work with so many different amazing CEOs. And so I joined J. Crew, and basically was starting up Madewell for J. Crew Corporation. And at the time, again, it was very much about, here's the name, here's the brand, and we want to do this to it, and kind of working through that. So I'll walk you through as well what that looks like. And again, it was a very different type of philosophy. If you think about Mickey, it was about exclusivity. It was about if you think about the idea of kind of aspiration, right? Whereas Mickey was Gap, J. Crew. It was very much about broader appeal. About kind of a lot more volume in a way, and a lot more about kind of like appealing to a lot more people, a lot more age groups. So it was a very different philosophy, and I think that I learned a lot through that process and those kind of different leadership values, basically. And then I was at Madewell for about just under 8 years, and I left. It was a big shock. I left the baby that I brought up, basically, and and I took about a year off and actually kind of consulted for a while. And I actually kind of joined and consulted for a small company called Herschel's. They're known for their backpacks. They're known for their kind of accessories, basically. And it's basically two guys I met before this and then connected with them. And they wanted help in terms of focusing on their design process as well as kind of the creative idea of kind of building more within their brand. So worked with them for a little while and then met Carlos. And then I was like, and I'm going to be really frank with you, when I left Madewell, I was thinking that I'm never going to find a home or brand that I'm going to be as passionate about. And of course, I was wrong. Carlos came in and kind of, basically I met with him, and it was one of those situations where it was a denim brand, first and foremost. It was my sweet spot. And the other piece as well is I was looking for a brand that had soul and had DNA and had all of the right ingredients, especially from a design perspective. You need that. You need to kind of be able to work with incredible ingredients to make a great dish. And it was too good to be true. So, yeah, I joined the team about under 3 years ago. Sorry, that was a really long-winded page. So I want to walk you through some of the kind of execution and also design of what Carlos kind of mentioned in terms of the strategy. So what have I learned in terms of the brand creation, also transformation? I think the biggest thing is, there's a lot that takes part, but I think that I wanted to kind of pull it into 3 different buckets. These were basically kind of core values for me that were really important in terms of really establishing these core values and making sure that they work. On top of that, creating this opportunity to be able to be creative as well as to create uniqueness and also really grow the brand. And so from a brand perspective, understanding the history, creating and also protecting the core DNA of what the brand is, that's huge. You've really got to kind of understand the history of what it is to be able to go through and sift through and say, what is important? Let's make sure we protect this. What isn't important? What do we need to kind of move through and actually transform? And also kind of, again, making the brand relevant. Creating a unique story. I think that that ties into the marketing as well as making sure that from a unique story perspective, your brand and also how you look at kind of product, really that all of that is all part and part of it. Product perspective, I think that defining the product differentiation is hugely important, especially when it comes to the marketplace right now. At this, and where we are in retail, you can pretty much type in anything, and there'll be 15 billion versions of it, and every single price point. What makes you stand out? And that goes into the fact that you've got to be able to show up in a way that feels unique, and there's a trust, and also there's a connectivity in terms of the brand. And I think that, again, it goes back to my first point of brand equity and also brand value, and also making sure that you, as a customer, or you who's basically kind of working through the brand, that you feel like there's a uniqueness that feels different. Driving basically innovation and also relevance. I think that we're in fashion. We have to be we have to change. We have to be adaptable. We have to kind of be relevant. If not, we're just making clothes. We're not kind of participating in fashion. So I think that that's hugely important for us to kind of be relevant. Protecting quality and also perception and value as well. I think that the perceived value is very important. I think that, yes, different brands have different kind of, price points, but I think for Lucky, I think that, when we talk about premium, it did start off in a very kind of strong premium brand, and I think that the product that we kind of, give to the customer, it really needs to have that quality base, especially when it comes to kind of relationship of value and also price. Customer, creating, the customer-centric culture, that's something that, Carlos talked about already, and then also driving a two-way conversation and communication. Again, no longer can we just say, this is us, this is the brand that we are, go ahead and take it. We have to really kind of think about what the customer, we have to listen to the customer, and we have to understand them. It's not that we're asking the customer to design for us, we're not doing that, but we need to just understand what is it that they need, and what is it that makes them tick, and also at the same time, what is it that they love from us. And then from there, kind of have the basis to be able to grow and have confidence in growing the brand. And also inspire the customer. I think it goes back to kind of uniqueness and telling the story. If you can't inspire them, why are they coming to you? Especially from a product perspective, they have so many choices. You've got to be able to tell that story, be able to kind of make it unique. I'm going to walk you through now the kind of journey that I've learned, and I'm just giving you a little bit more of a color in terms of where my journey and in terms of learning. So Abercrombie, I'm sure a lot of you guys know this already. It was basically an original outfitter that sold sporting goods. I mean, it's pretty unique in the sense that it was established in oh my gosh, 1938. That's incorrect. But anyway, got it wrong. So the date, 1939 there. But Abercrombie basically, it's sporting goods, and also the customer itself is basically, there were so many kind of like amazing attributes in terms of the brand at the time. And then during the, I guess 77, basically Abercrombie was kind of, went bankrupt. And then track back now very quickly to kind of now, what happened was basically you had Limited Brand that kind of bought it out. And then from there, Mike Jeffries came on board and basically became president and also then CEO. And I think at the time, the biggest change was there was a CEO that came in and had a vision and wanted to change this brand to become a very, very much more of a contemporary brand. And again, carving out those ideas of basically collegiate, classic, the classic kind of element of kind of American kind of casual wear, as well as kind of preppy. All those things were basically instilled in the brand. And I think that it really kind of had a huge transformation, of course, very, very successful. And of course, in terms of products, as we know, it's denim, it's T-shirts, it's graphic tees, it's fleece. And so there were huge dominance in terms of key drivers, in terms of categories. That was really great. And if you think about, I'm showing this in terms of before and after, because I always feel like people love before and after. They love a makeover. So maybe this was a little bit more entertaining. It was it's basically, it sold guns. If you think about Abercrombie selling guns, there were kind of, a lot of kind of like equipment, sports equipment, but now it's basically this kind of like, it's changed now in the last few years, but it was like perfume, Fierce was everywhere, and it was really dark, and there was a lot of naked salespeople everywhere. So so that's one of the attractions. It was basically capturing this audience that was really elite and kind of really good looking. And from a product perspective, it was basically, it sold, like you said, very kind of like, very kind of workweary ideas, kind of no frills, very much about kind of utilitarian. And then it went to great denim, beautiful kind of cargo, and it was an obsession to detail. I think that was what was so powerful about Abercrombie. I felt like during my time there, I learned so much about product building. It was this obsession of, to the point where it was basically how many stitches per inch are you going to use on your top stitching? What is the text thread? How thick is it going to be? And how are you going to wash it? How is it going to pucker? And so that obsession of detail was so important. And I think that during the time when we were there, it was basically, yes, I graduated from Kingston. I felt like I knew so much, and you basically relearn. And it was a huge learning curve. And I think that wash was incredible. If you think about the thickness of fabric and how they've kind of built so much wash and attention to detail, all those things were one of the reasons why they were so successful. It really had a great quality to the product. So you can, as you guys can see, it's basically fleece, graphics, and I'm just showing some of the kind of like highlighters of what I felt like Abercrombie stood for at the time. And then now Hollister. So Hollister basically was a make-believe brand, and again, it's about creating a vision and creating a brand from scratch. And Hollister, for some of you guys who don't know, it's basically the original name came from this Hollister Ranch. It's just above Santa Barbara, and it's a beautiful area that's kind of locals only. People go there to surf, and I think that we basically concepted this idea of basically building this brand and making it into a West Coast really cool surf idea, and making it very unique to basically the East Coast prep. Right, this is about kind of like surfing culture. It's about and I was learning about it too because I've never surfed my entire life. I'm scared of water. So for me it was like, what's OP? Oh my God, what's Volcom? And it's like during that process you learn, right? You kind of learn, oh wow, this is what it means. Okay, and we spent a lot of time. We had an office in Santa Barbara, in Santa Monica as well as in Laguna, where we actually stayed there and kind of observed and kind of really soak in who was wearing what and how people were dressing and kind of the influence in terms of the environment as well. And we created the story with the idea of basically targeting a younger audience between 14 and 18. And then also at the time, it was basically this idea of kind of Southern California and also this kind of vintage surf culture. And of course, the store really kind of represented that, right? In the stores, basically, there was a huge kind of like amazing kind of plasma screens of, there was a camera actually, I totally remember this. It was a camera basically over by the pier in Santa Monica, where it was live streaming imagery to the stores, and you saw the waves crashing, you saw people kind of surfing and stuff. And then I think, again, it creates that environment that is so amazing, especially from a store perspective, store experience. It was really great. And then also when you go into the stores, you can see color, you see palm trees, you see the wood and that kind of tiki kind of like surf hut. And again, it's all encompassing in terms of telling the story. And then the front of the stores, basically, you still had sexy men there. And it kind of drew people in. They're like, oh my God, they've got the zinc in the nose. And so that was really cool. I had no idea what that was, but it's okay. Yeah. Sunscreen that wasn't wiped off. And then, from a product perspective, again, going back to, if you have a foundation of a corporation like Abercrombie that knows how to do denim so well, knows how to do graphic tee so well, knows how to do wash, it's very natural for them to create a brand and leverage those expertise. And so they basically created, again, a brand that really kind of showed denim, amazing, beautiful kind of wash products, and again, kind of expanding on the kind of nature of what a surf culture looks like. So all of this in terms of just the beachy kind of vibe, and also at the time, all that kind of like really big, bold graphics, and also creating that the brand equity in terms of the logoing was very important. At Abercrombie, it was the moose, connecting it to that hunting idea, right? For Hollister, it was basically the bird. I think at the time we were dreaming, we had the idea of palm tree, but somebody took it. So we actually ended up with a bird. But it was really exciting. And then also, of course, in denim as well, that the iconography of making it different, making sure that it feels different to the other brands, that was all kind of part of generating a brand that feels differentiated. And then Rule. This is a little bit more quieter because I think it went away after maybe 5 years. But Rule, again, the story was basically kind of creating that postgraduate idea. And what was interesting about Rule is that it was the first time that we really kind of felt different about making sure the product felt different, right? It wasn't just about denim and T-shirt and graphics. It was about, hey, what else do we need to do? And that's where we kind of started to kind of build this story about this European family that came and they traveled from however many kind of couple of generations ago and traveled to New York, and they settled in New York. And it was basically this whole idea of they settled in Greenwich Village, and they were inspired by New York City, and it was very much more of a modern kind of like urban influence in terms of a brand. And so there was charcoal. It was not black. There was charcoal, so it got darker. Because I'm joking, because Abercrombie and Hollister, they never used black. they only used navy. So charcoal was used. It was really radical. And then also at the time, it was skinny jeans, and whereas everybody else was doing boots. So we were basically paving the way in terms of new ideas. And it was really exciting because we used a lot of great, we basically kind of put a lot of new trends into the mix. With this new brand, and and I think that a lot of the roots was basically off of this idea of 1922, and this whole idea of quality, tradition, and also even just a sophistication. Saying the word sophisticated in the Abercrombie Corporation was quite radical, but it was basically at the time it was like a higher price point, and we could use leather, we could use cashmere, we could use silk. It was like I mean, for when we were working on it, it was like, oh my gosh, we can make anything. It was great. And so that was really exciting. And then the age group was basically 22 to 35. And I think that, again, protecting the idea of basically kind of, creating the story and then from there building product off of that. Of course, you can see, denim, leather goods, cashmere, graphic tees and fleece was still part of it, but there was so much more that we could basically give, and it was about breadth and also differentiation in terms of product. We basically created this, beautiful kind of like packaging, and also all of these ideas were basically off of some relevance in terms of just inspiration from New York. This was basically about, the person can drink now. This is basically off of a whiskey bottle. So we were like, connecting all those dots. It was really fun. And then from a store perspective, we were building these kind of facades that were basically kind of Greenwich Village inspired kind of houses, basically. And again, when we first, and this is actually a true story, when we first opened this up as a concept store in Easton, in Columbus, Ohio, people were queuing outside, and they had their IDs ready because they thought that it was a nightclub. They thought that it was like a new thing that they wanted to get into, and there were kids everywhere. And then we realized it was like, oh, it's working. I thought it was a disaster, but the CEO was like, yes, it's working. Yeah, we're creating kind of, buzz. So again, the rooms, you can see it's really kind of moody, sexy, and I think what really kind of we were designing was basically rooms that were very much about, it was somebody's house. It was somebody's kind of living room. You're walking in, the product was beautiful. It was really well lit. And there was like paintings on the floor, and this family they've moved in, but they haven't bothered to put the paintings up. It was all kind of there. And I think it was really kind of exciting to kind of build a brand like that. And what was really great was that, the interiors of the floors, in the middle of it all was basically luggage from a make-believe story that we had, was with the beautiful luggage that came from the European inspiration, and from there really leather goods was really a huge center of the presentation as well. You can see over here, these were not sold. These were actually very, very expensive because they were one-off made in Italy, so they were just basically just for show. And then we sold the leather goods, and I'll show you what those look like. So leather was actually a huge focus, and we actually designed these, and these were basically made in Italy. They were actually maybe too expensive for that market, but really gorgeous. Didn't compromise on cost and quality. It was really stunning. And I think at the time, again going back to the philosophy of Abercrombie Corporation, it was about details. And as you can see, it was basically beauty inside and out. There was attention to detail. And then of course, all of this as well in terms of just basically the packaging as well, Mercer, just naming after the New York City, all of these were just all about washes and details there. Madewell, so I was there from the beginning as well. Nikki Drexler had the name of Madewell, and again, it was basically about bringing a name that had already been established. And again, Madewell at the time was basically was a workwear company, uniform producer. And so the name we had, and we basically, when Mickey came and took this on, we basically kind of relaunched it in 2006, and really kind of, from workwear to basically a little bit more, much more of a relevant brand. And the stores, again, in terms of environment, you can see how light and kind of, easy and very kind of, very appealing it is. Really quickly. And then before, you can see workwear, very kind of like no frills, very utilitarian. And then the relevance in terms of making sure that, from a brand perspective, it was really anchored towards, denim, and also a lot of relevant kind of fashion around it. And then I'm going to talk you through Lucky. Okay. So for Lucky, I think one of the things that was a huge learning in terms of, brand, I think that, I'm going to talk you through basically the brand piece, as well as product evolution, as well as design process, and also store experience, and also the insight, and also the marketing approach that we have. As you know, SWOT analysis is always something that's really kind of easy for us to kind of, do that as initial. And so from a product perspective, we talk a lot about kind of, the fact that from a strength, it's basically, if it's an authentic brand that has a lot of strong pillars, the DNA is really strong. There's a huge brand loyalty, which Carlos talked about. There's a strong kind of, brand awareness, which, Carlos showed in his deck as well. In terms of weaknesses, there was definitely a lack of relevance. That was something that we were really targeting and making sure that we knew that we had to really, show up in that area, as well as, it was a demanding and lengthy process in terms of the design process, as well as the product timeline. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then also complexity in terms of the business model. There are many brands that basically only do brick and mortar. There's a lot of brands that do online. There's some that only do wholesale, and we were doing all of that. So again, that complexity is something that is maybe a weakness, but at the same time, we can maximize on it. Opportunity, putting basically the customer in the center was huge for us, and also capitalizing on denim and making sure that we build that. That is the forefront and also the foundation of the brand. We want to make sure that we really build off of that. The other piece as well is leveraging vendors. We have incredible vendor base as well, and then also leveraging the distribution. Going back to what we were talking about in terms of weakness. Threats, more traffic, which Carlos talked about, and also online, as well as kind of rising in fashion, fast fashion. I'll go through this really quickly, but before, of course, Carlos talked about basically the way that, the brand started, and also we were the original premium denim brand. And then the focus of, denim and West Coast was still there, the uniqueness, and also the way that the stores were basically, really high-end boutiques as well, and they were all very unique, which was really exciting. And then from a brand perspective, Lucky Clover with the 4 leaves were really kind of defining for the brand, as well as Lucky You and the Fly. That was really kind of a quirk and really kind of great messaging. And again, it's always been there, and it's again a very great strength of the brand. And then over here, basically, Carlos joined the brand, and this is where we're really imagining how we're kind of approaching the creative process, as well as really transforming the brand. And as you can see, denim democracy is kind of a huge piece of it, which is about kind of, denim, and we really believe in inclusiveness when it comes to the brand values. We've kind of built out, plus within our denim line, and also a lot more expansion to the line. And I think that, again, we really believe that it's if we have the right product, every single shape and size should be able to kind of wear it. So that's something that's a huge kind of push for us. And also the aesthetic vision as well, making sure that we have that personality and protect that kind of differentiation and the wit that that has always been there from a product perspective, and also creating versatility. This is something that we know that it's an opportunity for us. The brand was a little bit very narrow, and it's like, how do we broaden and really kind of reach a bigger audience and a bigger customer base? And I think that the biggest thing is, Carlos is very creative. He really kind of makes sure that all of us are approaching the brand from that way. Okay. Just a reminder of the brand history. This is basically a DNA of the brand. There's so much richness in terms of history and DNA. And I think that one of the things is, like I said, the fly message on the fly, all the beautiful graphics that the brand had done over the past 25, 26 years as well. And then you have basically products, which is basically very kind of workwear, and also a lot of great, beautiful denim as well. But then you have lots of kind of like very, I would say that these are really cool for the time, right? They're amazing at the time. But at the same time, now, if you think about like a bag like this, it would be a little tough. It's kind of very hippie. But, so again, it's all about, I just want to show you guys how a brand can lose its relevance, and it's how do we kind of like steer it to a better place that feels right. And so this is basically the brand pillars. We talk about music, Southern California, and also moto, and also this whole idea of Americana. And these are all really rich ingredients for us to work with. And I'm kind of trying to, for me, it was the same desire to basically show imagery, to evoke that kind of idea of what does that look like. And I think, again, music, you can imagine music is all about that kind of festival wear and that rock, that idea of kind of music. Everybody loves music, right? Even if you love so many different kind of genres of music, you can kind of really relate to it. And I think that, the graphic tees and just that spirit of, denim off of some, graphic tee, or even what you're wearing in terms of a festival, is all part of that outfit. Basically California, kind of West Coast lifestyle, this whole beach laid-backness, and I think that wash idea, when I say wash, I'm talking about when we wash a T-shirt, that kind of softness, all those things are very important for a product. And I think that, these are basically our own product here. You can see how we're kind of evolving the brand. And then from a moto as well, you can see that edge, that kind of idea of the biker, that kind of moto, the rebel, and that heritage is all part of the brand DNA, and all these are actually our images here. So we've really evolved and actually honored the DNA that we have. Americana as well. It's I think that Americana, it's not just about, I know that I showed an image of a flag, it's very obvious, but it's not just about that. It's about the spirit of this idea of kind of casualness. And I think that denim is the epitome of that. And so really kind of showing these images to show what that looks like. And these are all of our images here. And then when it comes to brand aesthetic evolution, we talk about denim as being the biggest focus, and I think that fit, fashion, fabric, and also the idea of just all the finishes that we do, this the obsession to wash and also quality is huge, and denim is nearly 50% of our business. We want to make sure that we really kind of like show up, and I think in the past it was basically we were doing a lot of 5 pockets. Basic 5 pockets, and there's not enough of fashion. And as a denim brand, we need to do all of that and do it all well. So that was a huge focus for us. And also bohemian. A lot of people see Lucky as a bohemian brand. Yes, we are a bohemian brand. There's a lot of that spirit, but at the same time, it's not just a certain look. So I want to show you what that looks like and what that transition can be. And also versatility in terms of making sure that we kind of really grow in that area. And then also accessories. I put this in here because I think that accessories really make an outfit feel very different, and it can really shape a personality. Denim, as I said, we're really kind of showing up on fashion, as you can see. It's a lot of motion here, and it's not just about a basic 5 pocket. That was really kind of important for us. So really kind of being obsessive about quality, and that, again, especially in the denim area right now, everybody is really kind of, everybody wants to be in part of denim because it's the foundation of everybody's wardrobe. And so, we really want to make sure that we're pushing that innovation in this area. And also versatility. This is something that is a new word for us at Lucky. And the reason why is because it was very narrow in terms of the look and feel. It was very kind of, boho to the customer was very much about woodblock and prints. And it was a mix of prints, and it was very kind of like very ethnic, I guess, as well. And at the end of the day, it's not just about that. And I think that you can see from these slides that it can be yes, kind of the woodblock and more traditional ideas, but at the same time, it can be about just a simple piece as well. And then also, in terms of kind of versatility, it doesn't, in the past, it was very much about it's a dress and that's it. And the versatility aspect of it wasn't really kind of built out. And I think that we can basically build out a much more of a robust, beautiful kind of collection that the customer can wear this for date night and they can wear it for different occasions. So that was something that was a strategy that we really wanted to implement. Like I said, in terms of accessories, this is basically where we've really expanded. And you can see basically it's boots all the way through to heels. And again, it's all about that versatility, and from tote bag all the way to a handbag. So it's just again that spectrum of showing up in a way that really captures the customer's wardrobe. Like what Carlos was saying, they were using us for a weekend. What are they wearing when it comes to date night? What are they wearing when they want to dress up a little bit more? And so for us, if they trust our taste and if they trust we have that connection with the customer, we should be able to do this well and give them that product range that they would love. And then the licensees, Carlos showed the growth of licensees. And again, I think that what's really transformative and also exciting is that, Carlos and I both believe that, licensing companies, in the past, the relationship was very much about, hey, this is my name, go ahead and use it. Give me the royalty and give me the numbers after that. And there was not that really strong connection in terms of working with the licensees as your own brand, basically working with them like they're an extension of your team. And so we've really kind of instilled that kind of philosophy within the way that we work with licensees. And in return, the product looks better. It looks way more connected in terms of the brand. And I think that, that's really worked out in such a great way for us. And I think that change in terms of how we're, again, partnering, collaborating with our external partners, they've become internal partners for us. And so for Boots, for Camudo, it's beautiful. We're very proud of all of these different licensees, and we've really kind of continue to grow this area. And more here as well. And of course, home as well. This is brand new for us, so don't say anything. The watches as well, don't say anything yet. I want to talk you through the design process. So this is basically an example of how we work. And Carlos talked about the go-to-market calendar, and we talk about it in terms of from inception concept all the way through to in-store. And I think in the past, we were basically working in a very traditional method. Most companies are. And there's a lot of fast fashion companies that weren't doing that, and they were really reinventing their model. And so we were basically the need is really for us to change and adapt. And I think that, so what we thought about was basically how do we shrink and also shrink our calendar. And what's really challenging for us is that we are not just designing and just selling it ourselves in our own stores. We're basically having to show up in terms of a wholesale time frame as well, which is in the middle of the process. So really, our 38 weeks that we have right now is actually pretty remarkable that we'd be able to do that. And of course, we can always challenge ourselves to get quicker and be faster, but we're working through it. And so this is basically the first step. This is actually our concept boards for denim. Our team basically builds out these concept boards that tell a story, and we work with, I don't expect you guys to see the details. It's more just the process. But, we build out kind of ideas. We show kind of, it's the same way, inspiration boards, building out all those ideas and actually telling a story, making sure that in each delivery, the biggest thing that we kind of kick off in terms of concept is basically the narrative for the season. First and foremost, of course, you've got to have a really strong foundation of the vision of the brand. Then you basically go through the narrative for the season, and then from there, with each delivery, what does it look like? What's the product differentiation for each delivery? So this is basically denim. And then for fashion, this is crazy, I know. A lot of colors here. But this is actually from women's on one side, over here, and then men's on the other side. And this is how we show concept to the merchant team, and we basically collaborate really well with merchant team to kind of really align on what it is that's going to drive the business. And Jenna's here, and she's amazing, comes from a great wealth of experience. So she's able to come in and kind of like, challenge our process as well, which is great. And this is basically showing up on, again, the narrative of the season, and then seeing the synergy between men's and women's. We have both genders within our brand, and that's really exciting. And then basically from there, what we do is we actually invite our vendors, our licensee partners, and also, of course, our own design team to come in and see the concept. And the reason why we do that is because this is how we're changing the model. We're actually asking our vendors and also our licensees to go and design as well. And what that means is we're collaborating. We're no longer doing the traditional model where, hey, design team, you've got to go and do a tech pack and be obsessed about every single design, and then from there, and pass it to tech team, and they go through the technical aspects of it. And then from there, we send it out to the vendor. They make a sample. It comes back, and we're like, no, we don't like it anymore. Then we go back, and so that was what was the traditional process. The way that we're working right now is we're changing the way we're working, where we're going much more, we're collaborating in a very different way with the vendors and also with our licensees. And really what it boils down to is a quicker and more reactionary process. And what that means is that we're creating more we're actually asking for more creativity from the vendors as well as from our own team, because it's not just, we're not saying internally we're not doing anything. We're basically kind of, our biggest thing is making sure that we still design a lot of things, but we're basically collaborating with them to make sure that they understand our concept and what it is that we want to do. So this is a huge deal. And then also research and development. Basically, we're kind of in the vendors' offices. We're working with them, and again, it's about speed. So we're basically there working with them in a huge collaboration and working side by side with them as well. And then this is, so once all that's done, I'm kind of flying through it a little bit, but once all that's done, the product comes in, and we basically work with the merchandising team to kind of adopt and really kind of basically edit the line. And then we basically build out this room that really tells that story. This is from another season, but it shows basically the idea of kind of, the product and how it looks in terms of an environment like a store. And you can see just, we build out presentation rooms that way. Okay. And then when it comes to store in terms of Lucky, this is basically how Lucky stores were. And you can see, again, when I talk about the boutiqueness of the brand at the time, it was very eclectic. Every single store is different. It's amazing in terms of the fact that it's so embracing in terms of creativity, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a nightmare to kind of, be able to say, our brand is about this, right? If you walk into this store, it could be really hippie and rock and roll, and then this one is a little bit more classic. So again, the variety of differentiation is very different. So I think that we were kind of, not that we're trying to tighten up and make everything the same. That's not what we want to do. We want to honor the creativity and differentiation, but at the same time, making sure that we can kind of create the guardrails and making sure that we feel happy with what we present to the customer. So this is actually our point store, and Carlos referred to us as a new flagship store. This is basically in Manhattan Beach, and this is our store that we have, and it's our first concept store where we have, of course, the environment basically where the door closes and there's a rolling system where it's like a garage door. Again, it rolls up, it's beautiful, and then there's like gorgeous kind of like inspiration in here. Again, telling the story, seating areas as well, to kind of, again, talking about the customer-centric culture, really giving the customer a little bit more time, honoring and giving them an experience that feels much more unique. And then, of course, there's art in here in terms of honoring the brand pillars as well. In the stores, again, there's a denim bar, there's collections for women's and also men's, and you have accessories here, and also this is basically where we have a beautiful kind of jewel box of accessories with leather goods here. And this is basically where we actually tested some homeware as well, which was really great, and there was a great response. And then branding, this is basically from 2012 and 2014. I joke around, it looks like a romance novel cover. It does. We were here, basically, and now we're here. So it just feels cooler, again, connecting to the brand and what we feel like is relevant. And even from a kind of denim perspective, again, we have, plus we've got different shapes. Our denim, the quality of denim, the recovery, there's so many different body types, and we're really kind of, giving that spectrum of fits. You can see, even just, these are our team members in the office. They kind of, we put them in online as well. And then basically our direct mail as well, and you can see our direct mail, and also really kind of connecting with the customer in their homes, and also digital. And then this is basically a great example of versatility. We have suiting here for men's as well, which is kind of, again, lucky doing suiting, wow. And we were able to kind of like slowly kind of like, add that in, and it's an extension. It's beautiful. And then in terms of collaborations, again, from a brand perspective, we've always had licensing partners. So basically all the music kind of like graphics that we have are all licensed. And I think that we're able to kind of work on so many different kind of relevant licensing partners like, Rolling Stones. And then also most recently we had basically Conifer, who's this graffiti artist that we kind of collaborated with and actually had them paint the most beautiful leather jackets. This is basically an artist again that did amazing kind of art here. And then also Adam Nichols, and then also Triumph, again, Pendleton. So really picking the right brands to kind of, to present to the customer. They believe in us. We want to pick the right kind of partners so that it really is synergistical with our own brand. And again, it's all about kind of creating the right partnership. This is what I was going to kind of finish with. It's basically, what did I learn from all this? And I think one of the biggest things that I felt like was huge was basically balancing the heritage of the history to evolution. And I think that delicate balance of, making sure that you protect the DNA of the brand and at the same time really knowing what to stretch, what to grow, and what to not to. So it's that kind of like, idea of, that balance of fast fashion versus kind of, what is it that you want to kind of make sure you protect. And I think if you don't evolve, you basically be stagnant. And I think that that's where some of the brands suffer. But if you evolve too fast, you might be chasing trends and you lose the sight of your own kind of identity. So that's something that is always something that we always talk about and we really need to be careful of in terms of that kind of balancing act. The other piece as well is brand transformation and starting with yourself. And what I mean by that is in order for you to enter into a company, a brand, project, whatever it may be, you've got to be able to be prepared to be open-minded. You can't go in there and go, I'm going to do this and that's it, and not going to learn. Because if you do that, if you have that mentality, you will never evolve and do the right thing for the brand. So I think that it's really important to be able to go in there and have an open mind, to be able to transform the brand as well as transform yourself. And then the other piece as well is continuing to grow and also evolving and striving for better. This is something for me that's huge. I think that you always want to, my philosophy is you always want to be better than your last. So every project, and again, if we talk about 4 seasons, every single delivery, you always want that to be better and better and better. It's a vicious appetite, but I think that that's what kind of drives us. And I think that, again, from a creative perspective, if you don't drive for better, that means you didn't learn. And you're not learning from what you just did. Because if you don't want to copy and paste, that doesn't really feel good. That's how we kind of re-energize the team, and we're always kind of moving forward. So it's always basically the next is always better. That's the kind of mental state that I'm in all the time. The next is always better. And then staying objective and also basically kind of being the empathy aspect is really important. And the reason why I put that in is because I feel like in order for you to work well as a team and also be able to kind of collaborate well, I think you have to stay objective. You have to be able to be, if you're negotiating and talking to a certain kind of like, partner, and you have to understand their perspective. And you always have to kind of, when you understand their perspective, you understand your own perspective, then you can be objective. And then you can make strong decisions. And it's not an emotional decision because you're sitting in design and you don't want this to change. So you've got to do what's right for the business. You've got to do what's right for the brand. And so, that kind of idea of understanding each other is very important. Understanding each other's kind of, position as well, understanding and building the right decisions. And then key advantage for Lucky Brand is basically talent and also hiring the great people. I think Carlos talked about this, is, at the end of the day with any brand, it's not just the brand. You can have an amazing brand. If you don't have the right people growing the brand, it doesn't mean anything. And I think it's all about people that really drive the brand or company. So I think talent and also having the right people in the company is the first and foremost first step that you have to make. And then I wrote in here, never stop learning, and also learn, unlearn, and relearn. And what I mean by that is, and I really believe in this, every day when I walk in, I'm not just learning. Yes, I'm at a position where I'm guiding the team, but I'm learning from them every day. I'm learning from my cross-functional teams. I'm learning from, even today, I was going through a tour, I've learned so much today. And it's that constant evolving and really trying to, listen, and you learn, and hopefully you unlearn because you feel like, oh my God, I don't know anything, and then you relearn again. So I think that philosophy to me has carried me through as well. So yeah, stay curious, that's how I see it. So thank you. Sorry, I've gone really over. Thank you. Thank you. So late.
Don't go.
Oh, okay.
Have a seat. Is this on?
You want us here?
Yeah, just have a seat. I don't know that. Is my mic on? Yeah, okay. So hi, I'm Susan Avila. I'm chair of the Department of Design, and we're running a little bit low on time, but I want to quickly, of course, thank our wonderful speakers for those really enlightening talks that we just heard. I'm just going to sort of do a blanket thank you to everyone involved with this event, because it's been really incredible, and especially the Alberini Family Foundation for your generous donation to design.
Thank you.
We have a little bit of time for some questions and answers, and we're going to just sort of make this informal. And Carlos has informed me that he has generously offered to give a Lucky Brand gift card to every student that asks a question. So there's a microphone on each side, so if you want to get up and line up, because it'll be first.
Denim cards right here.
Okay.
Oh my God.
We're ready.
So now, of course, I was going to just start out with one question really quickly, and I think both of you sort of touched on this already in your talks, but this is the instructor in me, and I just want you to sort of explain maybe quickly, what are some of the essential non-design skills that every designer should have?
Oh, that's for you.
Good question. Non-essential design skills. I mean, I still go back to the partnership. I think that collaboration and that idea of really kind of working together, and that idea of kind of, basically that objective, comment that I made, where you have to listen to each other, you've got to learn, and you've got to understand each other's points of views. And yes, you're sitting in a creative field and you're sitting in design, but it's a business. So you've got to understand the big picture. And I think that that's huge in terms of understanding and listening and collaborating. Oh,
So thank you, Carlos. So we'll just go.
this is going to be fun.
One by one. So Drake, you want to start?
Thank you, Professor Avila. For those of you that may not know me, my name is Drake Alexander. In a few short weeks, I'll be an alumni of UC Davis. What advice can you provide a newly graduated fashion design student? Where should we start? How do we get our foot through the door in such a competitive industry?
I can answer that. Maybe you can.
Go ahead.
I think in terms of getting your foot in the door, it's tough out there right now. The industry is in a tough spot in terms of retail, and I think there's a lot of brands shrinking. So it is tough, but I'm not going to scare you. But I think what's really exciting also is that it's all about the person. For me, it's personality as well. Mm-hmm. I think the human and the person you are when you come through. And yes, the portfolio is very important, and also your credentials is very important. But when it comes to kind of an interview process, I meet a lot of people, and what I see first and foremost is basically the state of mind and what they bring to the company. And so, that willingness to learn, and also the idea of the fact that they're coming in and wanting to kind of be part and add a value is huge. And I think that every company is looking for that. And so
I would add to that, I think it's very important to really have the drive to really look for that opportunity. Things don't just come to you, but it's more about what you put into that process to really at least be able to be considered. And you'll be surprised how many people don't do that. So I think that, I would say just, no job, no project, no opportunity is small. I think that there is always, and you never know what's going to happen once you are in front of that opportunity. There's so many times that you just don't see what's happening until it is happening, and never underestimate the size of the opportunity. So just go for it, and then make your decision based on what you are presented with. But don't say, well, no, that's probably not good for me. No, just you always have time to say, well, you know what, that is not good for me. But for that, first you have to have the opportunity in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
hopefully one day I'll be lucky enough to work at Lucky. No pun intended.
Here. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Steven. I'm a MBA candidate here at the GSM, and I really like this presentation, and I'm very fascinated actually about the customer centricity, which has become, seems to be a very core part of your strategy. And I wanted to kind of delve into that a little bit more and ask you if you could elaborate on, now that you've identified your gold, your platinum tier customers, what have you done to learn more about them, and what drives their affinity to Lucky Brand, and perhaps how you're going to attempt to grow that group and those segments.
Are you looking for a job?
I would
that's a
love
great.
to talk about one, but yeah.
It's a great question. We are, actually, we are kind of new in this, but we have engaged another firm called AMP to identify what we call the personas. So the idea is to really segment that customer base into key personas that we think are big purchasers of our product, and then understand what their life journey is. And then based on what we learn about what they do, and I don't know, let's say that one of those personas is a mom that has small kids that play soccer or whatever, and she takes them to school every single day. That would be part of the life journey of that particular persona. So we want to know that, she's probably not reading magazines, so why would we go and market in a magazine? Maybe what she does is checking her mobile phone in the morning to check the weather. Well, how about if we insert ourselves in that point of contact? So, that's just an example, a simple one. But so we are in that process now in identifying the personas. We think we're going to come up with about 4 or 5 of those that, pretty much cover that, totality, within that customer base. And then try to market to them based on their day-to-day kind of like life activities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here. So you know what? I'm gonna put this. If you can, just take to the line over there. Okay. Just, efficiency is always important. So I'm gonna leave it to you guys. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so unfortunately, we only have time for 2 more questions.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
But we really thank you for the initiative, and there'll be a little time maybe to mingle after the talk. It just we've got to give up the room basically. Okay, so just.
Hi,
Hi.
My name is Sally Lee. I'm a 4th-year Manager Economics and Design double major. First of all, thank you so much for coming out tonight. It was very enlightening to hear your business and design story behind Lucky Brand.
Thank you.
And my question is, how many iterations of a project do you guys typically go through before putting the project out for market? And how is that process like?
When you say project, I'll convert it to product.
Yeah, or product.
So we go through actually from concept design. So that's one kind of iteration, and we see it one more time, and then we do a fitting, 2 more fittings. So basically, I would say 3 times on average till we get to the perfected end for now. But of course, we feel like we can shorten that time frame. Yeah.
How's the process like between each stages of a product going out for market?
Well, the first is basically kind of working with the vendors and also with our own design team to kind of get the initial idea out, and then from there the sample come in, and we all go through and actually look at the product and say, oh, do we love this? Do we not? And we may change it. We may change it through fit, and we go through a fitting process where we have a fit model come in, and we have our tech team, our technical design team, that guides us through what the best specs are. It's kind of, and then we go through a lot of kind of stages of basically change in terms of the garment, and then we send out all that information and send it to the vendor. They make a new sample with all the changes, and it gets sent back to us. And then basically we look at it again, and if it's all good, we go into production. So
But-
usually that happens through different processes.
But we don't have the opportunity to test the product, repeatedly before we launch to market, because we are always working on whatever that season is. So, once we say we go, and that is, we are relying on our internal team, whether it's the merchants that adopt that line of product or our designers. And then once we say we go, we go. One thing that we are doing for the first time is we're working with another company that does testing online. So we are showing, a couple of images to the customers and say, okay, rate this one from 1 to 5, and rate this other one. And based on that, we are altering what we're doing with the product itself. And then, of course, we always rely on the history. Okay, we know that our customer loves whatever, this type of styling, or so we always use that to feed into what we're going to do in the future. Thank you.
One last question.
Hi, I'm Kai, and I'm an art and design student in Davis. And I heard you, and I'm very appreciative of Mr. Alberini and Ms. Lee's presentation. And
Thank you.
You guys mentioned about expanding into international waters, and which got me curious about the international visitors in America who may not have heard of Lucky Brand. And then if you are expanding to this area of customers, then which route are you guys going for? The more exclusive, high-end premium brand, or the more budget-friendly, inclusive one?
Well, so the way we're looking at international, the first big step is Canada for us. We already have 15 locations in Canada, and we are strengthening our infrastructure there. For example, we don't have a distribution center, and it's very difficult to feed or to service the business without that type of infrastructure. So we are opening one. So Canada is going to be first, and we already have a pretty good test with all the stores that we have. Now, outside Canada, we are thinking about Europe because of the affinity that we have found. Now, the positioning of the brand would not be any different than it is in here. So we're not going to go with a budget type of offering over there if we are a premium brand over here. Now, that being said, the pricing may be different only because the markets could command a higher pricing, and that is the case with most brands.
I am curious about the East Asia, about that market, because
Right.
it is expanding, namely China. And how would you market yourself to not just people in China? How about the Chinese visitors in America, and who may not share the brand philosophy, such as Americana or SoCal lifestyle?
Right. Well, just admit that we will see that. I mean, obviously, we believe in those pillars, and we believe that China, for example, could be a great market for us, not only because of how significant and numerous it is, but the opportunity, even the name of Lucky, I think, could be an interesting attraction. They are very interested in China, for example, in American brands. So we think that we bring a lot that could be very attractive for them as well. But we don't think we're ready for China yet.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm going to bring.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to make sure that everybody that was online, I was in the lines there, that you get a card, okay? So please, if you didn't, let us know. Thank you.
Did you guys get one?
So,
Did you guys get a card? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was wonderful. This is a really high bar for the inaugural lecture. So thank you, Carlos, Kin, and Susan, and thank you all to the students who had questions. And we have a little bit of time after after the event, maybe, so I encourage those of you who didn't get a chance to talk to come up and really sort of maybe ask your questions in person. But for now, let me just thank everyone who is here tonight. Let me also thank the Alberini family for their generosity. And I'm looking forward to more future lectures of this caliber. So good night, everyone.